What's up, ladies and gents? I hope you're doing well. Thought I'd do a video on politics, that thing we all know and love, being as the elections, or the UK elections, are just around the corner. On kind of who I'm going to vote for, why, kind of the general strategy I use. So yeah, I thought I'd just quickly go over a couple of notes that I've written. So we'll need this up. Excellent. So obviously the first thing is that there is a spectrum of effectiveness or effective voting. And obviously the kind of best way to vote would be to read all the manifestos, look at what the experts have to say in each different field. The problem with that being that even just reading the manifestos takes quite a bit of time, reading all the policies. Second of all, experts quite frequently disagree, so you can end up going down like different rabbit holes which take even more time and energy, and most people don't really want to spend or direct, should I say, using the capitalist kind of language there, don't really want to direct so much time and energy towards these kind of things. So I think it's good to try and come up with a bit of a shorter, less time and energy intensive way of voting, which hopefully will mean that the people we're voting for still align with our values. So yeah, that's just that. That's just it right there. So the first thing to note, or the second thing to note now, that all goals and aims in manifestos are actually claims to aim, as we'll all know most probably, being as quite frequently promises are made and then don't materialise. So the first question, or one of the first questions we should ask is how trustworthy are the people in X party? And it's easy to just say all politicians are untrustworthy. All politicians can't be trusted. In fact, that's the core part of many a joke. But obviously there's degrees of trustworthy. And there's a spectrum of trustworthiness or untrustworthiness, scrupulousness and unscrupulousness. So yeah, that's one of the first questions I think we should ask. Since most of us won't know them personally, what are their past records like? Obviously this is still going to take a little bit of time, but not as much time hopefully as reading all the manifestos, reading all the policies, and delving into what all the experts have to say and their disagreements and agreements. Second question, or again among the first questions, I think this is a really important one. How much do they care about our opinion? So there are degrees of democracy, or a spectrum of democracy, and the first past the post system that we have in the UK currently, I would say, is a very low degree of democracy, since it allows political parties to get majorities and therefore power, even with a low percentage of people voting for them. So the question that follows that: which parties want to bring in proportional representation, versus which want to keep this shit version of democracy? And I think that's a reasonable description of it. Obviously we've got, tyrannical dictatorship, no democracy, but then not too much above it, I would say, is first past the post, for that reason, that it's not that representative of what people actually, who people want in power. CGP Grey does a great YouTube video on proportional representation. It's called Single Transferable Vote. I just rewatched the video because it's been a few years since I watched it. And the single transferable vote seems like a very good system, at least relative to what we've got at the moment. A much better system than we've got at the moment. I think this is really important because imagine someone comes up to us and wants our vote, and they come up to you and just like, please vote for me. By the way, I don't give a shit about your opinion. That's essentially what I think the parties that don't support proportional representation are doing. And those that don't support proportional representation unsurprisingly, are the people, the parties that keep getting in power. So in the UK, that's Conservatives and Labour, being as it just keeps bouncing back and forth between them. They're obviously relatively happy with the system as it is in terms of voting, because they tend to get quite a bit of power. So they're not interested in that, apparently. Whereas the other parties, or at least I know, well, I've not checked the manifestos this year, but generally in the past, I need to recheck this. Lib Dems, I feel like I heard that they're in support of it, and the Green Party are in support of proportional representation. So immediately that makes me way more inclined to vote for not one of the two main parties. Now, of course, what most people will say when I tell them that is, it's not a tactical vote. You got to vote tactically, strategically. If you don't want Conservatives in, you've got to vote Labour. And what I should be saying to that, although I haven't in the past, is that every vote is some kind of tactic or strategy, and voting for one of that's not in the two main parties is a long-term strategy, essentially, that with the idea that eventually we might be able to break out of this system where we keep bouncing backwards and forth between two parties which the majority of people don't want in. So I think it's kind of ridiculous. So it reminds me of this phrase, which I can't remember exactly what it is, but I'll paraphrase it. If we repeatedly do the same thing but expect different results, we're insane. And obviously, we're just repeatedly bouncing between Labour and Conservatives at the moment, essentially. So if we want something different, we need to vote for someone different. I feel like there was something else I was going to say in terms of that as well. But yeah, if someone was to come up to me and say, vote for me, I don't give a shit about what you have to say. I don't give a shit I don't give a shit about what you care about. I ain't voting for them, essentially. Right, next point. I feel like there was something else, but no doubt I'll remember it as soon as I finish this video. Everyone who seeks positions of power, I think this is an important point as well, does it for some balance between wanting to help others versus wanting to help themselves. How can we tell, no, it's not just politicians as well, it's any position of power. How can we tell where they lie on the spectrum of selflessness to selfishness? And I think the best way of trying to determine where people lie in terms of that is to ask the question, how does the amount of time / energy put into work compare with how much wealth they hoard versus how many resources they burn through in terms of their lifestyle, which is essentially just a comparison of input versus output. What most politicians, regardless of party, seem to at least on the surface put a lot of time and energy into their work. Obviously, it will be to different degrees depending on which party, so there might be some differences there. But there does seem to be a very, very big difference in terms of people who tend to have. The thing about hoard is, at what level do you class resources being hoarded? That word's quite loaded, but anyway, there seems to be quite a big difference in terms of people from different political parties and how much wealth they've accrued, not necessarily earned, but accrued, and how much and what their lifestyles are like, basically. And the more resources that people kind of drag towards themselves, and the more resource intensive their lifestyle, I think the more likely it is that the reason they got into power was this, as opposed to this. Now, an interesting point about that is that a narrative that's been pushed for quite a long time, which I'll go into, or might have already gone into in a different video, but I will certainly address this more in depth, shall we say, in a different video, is that job creation is good. We love ourselves a good job creation, don't we? And this it can and is often used to try and justify burning through tons of resources. Try to use basically to justify a really resource intensive lifestyle, because it's like, oh well, you know, look at all these servants I've got. Well, I'm providing them with work, aren't I? Yes, don't you know? But yeah, I think that's quite an interesting narrative. But I just thought that's a quick aside. We won't dwell on that for too long in this video. Another important point related to this question about seeking power for either a selfish or selfless reason, or some point between, is corruption. So obviously, most people don't really want corruptible politicians. Obviously, corruption is not a great thing for a lot of people. So again, related to this question, who is most likely going to be corruptible? Those that don't hoard so many resources and don't burn through so many resources in terms of their lifestyle, or those that do hoard resources and that do burn through a ton of resources in terms of their lifestyle? I think that's a decent way of kind of knowing that as well, or at least going with the odds on that. Because some people, obviously everyone needs money, tends to live a decent quality of life. But some people really like money, don't they? They really like money, and they like to buy up assets. Gimme, gimme, gimme. And then they rent those assets out to make even more money. And then, it's money, money, money. We love it, don't we? And I always get a vision of, if you've ever seen Scrooge McDuck when he dives into his little, little giant pile of gold in his safe. I get that kind of vibe from them. But yeah, I think that's important. It's an important question to ask, because obviously most people don't want corruptible politicians. Can be lobbied by various businesses and whatnot to help their interests over others. Okay, so once these questions are answered, then we can look at policies. We can look at policies if we want to. And what else have we written? Competency. Okay, so we could, why have we written this? Competency. So we could, one of the arguments against kind of not having the main parties in power, as I say, UK, Labour or Conservatives, is that because the other parties haven't really been in power, they might not be as competent. But of course, what this basically does is support the status quo, and supports the idea that we should just keep bouncing back and forth between Labour and Conservatives, and basically just maintain the same old crap. So I'm not too keen on that. It would be. I'm hopeful that the other parties are relatively competent. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Obviously, it does take some time to look at we can either look at just one person, i.e. the leader of the parties, or obviously ideally more people within the parties, to get a better idea. Now, this could be considered personality politics, but I think people's personalities and what people value, I think that really lends itself to what they tend to what policies they tend to support. So I think this is a decent way of voting without spending a ton of time on it. So yeah, do let me know what you think. I will say that in the past I've voted, well, the first time I voted was Lib Dem, and that was when I didn't really know what was going on. I still don't. And then since then I've been voting Green Party. I've not read the manifestos for the last couple of times though, so this time I will have a quick look at the manifestos and just make sure that they kind of still align with my values. But yeah, this is really important to me. Proportional representation, them actually caring about our opinion. I think that's really important. People in the Green Party tend, from what I've seen, not to hoard tons of resources, not to burn through tons of resources. They tend to be very in favour of green technology and kind of trying to sort out the climate, which I think is really important. And obviously some people don't even believe in climate change, but I think an important way of framing that, even if you don't believe in climate change, is that everything that's supposedly exacerbates climate change also pollutes air, food, water, etc. So even the people that don't believe in climate change, I'm assuming, and obviously we shouldn't assume, but I would like to think that they like clean air to breathe, and for their kids and their family and their friends, and clean water and clean food. But I don't know. There's probably some people out there that don't. And yeah, we'll leave it there, shall we? I don't want to make this too long. But yeah, hope you're doing all right. Anyway, do let me know what you think. I'll link that video of CGP Grey because he does go into the first past the post as well as the proportional representation. So, and they're pretty short videos. So yeah, hope you have a good rest of your day anyway, and take care. Peace.